Viktor Frankl, A Man's Search for Meaning, where he says we all have and we all go through our own Auschwitz.
Yeah.
Don't compare one with the other.
Right.
Because at the level that I am right now, I have my own suffering
Absolutely.
that nobody compares to no one's.
And nobody understands. And they shouldn't.
Right.
Because it's yours.
Right. How can the grandparents that suffer such a great suffering that's recognized internationally can understand the suffering of a teenager in this day and age?
Right.
They can't. They can't understand each other.
Yeah.
Unless they are at the level of awareness where they understand they cannot understand. Hello, welcome back. I'm Andreea Parc.
And I'm Dumitru.
And this is Alive Again podcast. Is a podcast where attorneys and other professionals meet to discuss real life challenges and how our decisions shaped our journeys. Today we are back home in New York and is part 2 of last week's episode, and we continue with some fun questions. But before we start, I would like to thank you for following us, and I invite you to subscribe and follow and to share with friends and family because it helps us tremendously. So let's start.
First question. Respect or rebellion? What counts as disrespect today? I think the newer generation is very outspoken, and I think we've learned from our predecessors and from our parents and grandparents a lot about what we want and we don't want in life and in various situations. And I think we are very outspoken, and I think we are very unapologetic to a lot of the older generation that may seem disrespectful at times.
I've grew up with my grandmother. So my mother's mother raised me in Romania, and I've noticed how my mother interacted with her and the difference between their interaction and my interaction with my mother and now you with me. It's such a huge difference. And I think it's generational evolution, and also the newer generation, because of all the progress, is more evolved, and I think they know what they want more.
I wouldn't go that far. Some of us are just, not necessarily that we know what we want, but we know what we don't want. Let's put it that way.
It can be taken as disrespect by older generations, but again, reality and perspective is individual, and how everybody sees things is how they perceive it for themselves. So what for us is normal, for other people might be disrespect.
Perspective.
Back to my apple technique.
You can repeat it for those who don't know.
My apple technique is my main teaching technique, and it stands for awareness, perspective, presence, letting go, and empowerment. And it starts with awareness, because without being aware of our lives and our situations, we can't really go forward. And the second one is perspective, because once we can see the situation in a different light, we already find half of the solution. Yeah. And from there goes the rest of the technique.
Second question. You should be grateful. Gratitude versus guilt. I want you to explain the Romanian perspective of this whole gratitude versus guilt thing.
As we joked about this subject last week, and I don't think it's only a Romanian thing, I think it's a general thing where especially parents bring this guilt thing into the conversation. Be grateful that you have a roof over your head. Be grateful that, and why I'm saying that it's not a Romanian thing, because I had conversations with clients on this, where their parents thought that by having food on the table and the roof over their head, the child should be happy. And the first part of my life, I thought the same thing. That by working a lot, by providing for you, by having everything that I thought you needed, clothes, private school, food, tutoring, extracurricular activities, you would be happy. But then looking now, with talking to the clients and looking through the child's eyes, it's not. But the parent sees it and its perspective as well.
From my perspective, from the kid's perspective in general, at that age, and when you're a kid, you don't think about those things.
Exactly.
And you don't say, I wasn't, 5, 6 years old thinking, wow, there's kids out there who don't have as much as I do.
Exactly, yeah.
I didn't know. I would eat the plate of food that was in front of me.
Or not.
Or throw it on the floor, or whatever I was doing. That was delicious. Go in my room, play my games, play with my friends. No care in the world. I'm talking from a future parent standpoint. I want to provide my kids with a good life because I want to create a productive member of society, not because I want them to thank me for what I did. But for example, with the asking for things, right? I didn't understand the value of $1 until I started working.
Right.
So I was asking for things even when I was old enough.
Yeah.
And I didn't understand that, hey, maybe there's a chance that money doesn't grow on trees, you know?
Right.
So I didn't, that wasn't even a thought process to me. I'm sure that other people think differently, but I was just, you don't understand a lot of things. I feel like I just became sentient like 2 years ago. I just started to be aware of myself like 2 years ago. I don't know. I'm now looking back, I'm incredibly grateful. But at the time,
Right.
you were beating yourself up that I'm not grateful when I didn't even understand what I should be grateful for, or the idea of gratitude I didn't understand.
Right, because again, back then
It's perspective.
Back then I had a totally different perspective. And I remember that you were in primary school, I believe, when I would give you $20 or $30 to have for food, which for a kid in primary school, that would be a lot of money.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, you would tell me that you spent all your money because you took your class to Starbucks for a tea or whatever. I don't think that at that age you would drink coffee. I was asking you, why are you doing that? And I realized that you have no way of knowing how...
I didn't understand the way that money works. Obviously. And B, I think I saw you and dad and my family members around being very generous. You guys were always very, very generous and giving. And I was like, that's what I saw and that's what I knew. Generosity and giving and doing things for people, treating people and generosity. And I was too young to understand the complexities of that manner.
Do you remember having these kinds of conversations when you were young, telling you that you are not grateful?
Never.
Yeah, I don't remember either.
I feel like even at 15, 16, when I did have a job, I feel like I wasn't super understanding of what that means, right? Because you have a job and it's not even about money. I'm just using this as an example, right? My first job, I was a lifeguard, and I wanted a pair of jeans. And with my first big girl check, I went and I bought myself a pair of jeans. That was my first ever purchase with money I made by myself. I was 16 at the time. So clearly, and I still have the jeans, by the way, and I still wear them quite often. But clearly, I didn't understand bills. I didn't understand that money needs to, hey, I can save that money. I don't need the jeans right now, but I can save that money so I can get something better in the long term. I didn't understand that. I didn't understand a lot of complexities that comes with being a person and
with responsibilities.
And I feel like it's a waste of energy, a waste of time, a waste of kind of everything to sit there and be angry at someone who doesn't understand what you're angry at them for, right? It's like arguing with a drunk. They're not ever gonna understand what you're talking about, so might as well give up on it. So I don't understand this whole...
Right, because of course you don't. You don't, because we are at a different level of awareness and understanding. But when people are stuck in certain patterns, both parents and children, that's when the conversations are confrontational, because either party doesn't understand what you just mentioned.
Well, let's be honest here. It's not the kids' issue because, again, they don't understand.
Right.
They don't understand.
Right.
So
Right.
It's up to you as a parent, as a grown-up, to say, is this an argument worth having with somebody who doesn't understand what I'm talking about?
Right. But if the parent...
And it's your job then to say, okay, how can I teach this child how to understand what I'm talking to them about? Because that's an issue with the parent, to teach their child how to be a grown-up, right?
Right. But in order for the parent to teach the child to be a grown-up, the parent needs to be aware. The same way as the child doesn't know how money works, the same parent doesn't know how explaining to the child.
Well, it's very interesting to now look back at our relationship and at being a kid, because these are things that I learn from myself for my children. You get mad at your kids for certain things, and 9 times out of 10 they don't even understand what you're talking about.
Exactly.
Because they don't understand the concept of no, or this is not safe, or you're gonna get burned if you touch the hot stove. They don't understand until they do it themselves.
Yeah.
And then they get burned and then they cry. And like arguing with a drunk.
Because the parent, from the parent point of view, wants to protect.
And why do parents need the validation of the child saying thank you for something that is bare minimum, I would think.
Because...
Is it an ego thing?
Yeah, it's an ego thing. The parent that is stuck in those patterns of I'm providing for my child and that's the reason why I'm suffering and I'm sacrificing myself for my child. That's when they expect the child, that's what it is, their expectations. The guilt trip. I raised you, I sacrificed myself for you, and now you're leaving. Because the parent expects when we're doing something today and looking for the outcome in the future. That I'm giving you this today because I'm expecting that someday when I need something like this, you will give this back to me or something similar. Or I'm providing for this child today with the expectation that when I grow older, the child will take care of me. And this is...
But why would someone live in that?
See, you're asking this question because you don't understand human nature. This is human nature. Expectations. Because
I mean, I
all
have
the
expectations
suffering,
too, absolutely. But
it's a difference between outcomes and expectations.
Yeah.
You put your heart and soul into a design and you work day and night to have a perfect garment and for the outcome to be a great piece. Right? But you're not expecting this to be...
I'm not expecting for whatever Jennifer Aniston to walk down the street and see me wearing the piece and say, wow, I'm gonna wear that. I'm gonna...
Right, you're detached from the outcome. What expectation is when you are attached to the outcome. So you don't do things unconditionally. You think you do it unconditionally. So these are things that's where disappointment comes from. Parents are disappointed with their children because they expected their children to do this, and that. When they sacrificed for the kids, they expect for the child. Some parents expect their children to give their lives for them. Do you understand?
No.
Okay, so...
Honestly, I'm happy I don't understand that one.
Okay, yeah.
I cannot fathom the idea of choosing to have a child, or, God forbid, I'm ever put in that position, period. And, I mean, not being unconditional. Right. Or to expect the kid to be I don't expect the kid to be a certain way because I did something for them. I expect them to be a certain way because I raised them properly and they know what's the correct thing to do. I'm not expecting anything in return from them. I'm expecting for them to go and have their life and be happy and have a beautiful, happy life.
Okay.
I'm not expecting them to come back and take care of me when I'm old instead of putting me in a nursing home.
Okay, but so you're having a child, right? And you raised the child properly and you did everything that it was under your power to do, right?
Right. The best of my ability.
Right. But that particular child turns out to do or be something that you don't agree with.
Okay.
how would you feel?
Disappointed in my parenting skills, probably.
See, that's attachment to the outcome. We come on this earth, each our individual selves, right? I gave birth to you.
But I'm not attached.
You are your individual self. What we are trying as parents is to protect you from suffering.
Right.
And
Right.
we expect that you, as a child, turn out the way we couldn't be,
But
better than us.
why is that attached to an expectation? Why can't you just do your best and hope for the best? I mean,
Right.
is
But that's the thing, because it's human to want something better for your child.
right.
But now what we're doing, we're trying to control the child's, because we think that if, like we said in the previous episode, I brought you in this world, I can take you out, right? If I brought the child into this world, I have the control over the child, which is not true. The child, it's
their own
individual person.
Right.
And we don't know what's best for the child,
Right.
right? But it's that expectation, the attachment of what we think it's best for that child. You know, if let's say a parent wants the child to be a successful doctor and to make money and to have to be married and to have 5 kids and a huge house and 5 cars and travel the world, and this is the expectation, the image that the parent created for the child, right? But the child doesn't want any of that. And he becomes an artist, right? And they're not married, they don't have kids.
But why is that my problem to worry about?
They don't have a house, they rent, right? But they're happy with their life.
But that's what I was going to say.
The way as it is.
If the kid is happy, why is that my problem?
Right. But if somebody's asking the parent, how is your kid? The parent that is asleep, not conscious of the whole conversation that we're having here, is going to be upset. Oh, my child is a bum, he doesn't do anything, and only because of the expectation that the parent put on the child. He's not coming to visit me. He's all alone. I don't have grandkids because
I don't have kids just to have you raise them.
Exactly, because you are conscious of the relationships, right? I am not the grandma to raise kids.
Well, I
am grandma.
No matter what, I'm not going to rely on someone else for anything. Unless I can do it for myself, I'm not going to do it at all.
Right. But it goes back to expectations. And this is what it traditionally, culturally, that's what it is. Grandparents raise kids. But in this world, in this society right now, especially in the US, grandparents at whatever, when you become a grandparent, I don't know, in your 60s, for example, you still have your job, your business, your things to do, your hobbies, new things to start, projects.
Yeah.
You're not there to just of course I'm gonna want to see my grandkids, right? But I'm not gonna be there to raise the grandkids.
Right, just as Robin from a few episodes ago,
Yeah.
she was saying that she puts a hard boundary with her daughter. I love to be there, I love to babysit every now and again, but there's a boundary there. I need to do my things, I need to...
Exactly. Yeah.
We went through the whole life system. Okay,
Next question.
next question. My house, my rules. So, because we still live in the same house, and because I am under your roof, I don't have a lot of rules per se, but I also don't feel that I'm very disrespectful either. I think going back to the question about disrespect, I think that we live in the house together and we need to respect each other in that way, that we respect our own space, respect each other's space, respect each other's privacy.
It was a time, and I don't know if you remember, you were in a headspace very, very different than now.
Yeah.
And when you were in bed most of the day,
Yeah.
and where you didn't do much,
Yeah.
and I was worried.
You had every right to be, sure.
And not necessarily that I was worried that you didn't have responsibilities for your own well-being, because you were eating only bad things. You weren't taking care of yourself properly.
Yeah.
Your room was a mess. And again, as a parent, because you were under my roof, I had to put some boundaries for myself.
Right.
Because going back to the question before, you are your own self,
Right.
right? As a parent, I felt the need to guide you.
Right.
And I don't know if you remember that we had conversations every day and you slammed the door on me because you didn't want lecturing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And for a young adult living in the parents' house, I think it should be boundaries for both generations. I mean, I grew up with my parents and my grandparents in the same small apartment in Bucharest. And I didn't like it. And I don't agree with multiple generations to live in the same house.
Yeah.
Because of different point of views and different perspectives. And I don't want to get frustrated and have unnecessary discussions.
Right.
But my house, my rules, it was something that we went through.
Yeah, but so that time was, I was under a pretty deep depression. And yeah, it was really frustrating for both of us to have those conversations every day. But I still think you did a pretty good job of managing to the best of your abilities managing me, and at the same time, it frustrated you, absolutely. But at the same time, I think you were pretty good about saying, let her do what she needs to do because she's obviously going through something. And I think you had that trust in me that this was not going to be forever.
Yeah.
Right? So, for example, now there's no rules. Right? we respect one another, and we have, hey, I'm gonna cut a pattern. I'm gonna cut a shirt in the living room. Is that a problem? No. Great. Do what you need to do. I'm gonna have a call. So can I use your room? Sure. Go for it. I'll stay out here. We respect.
Right. At the end, we know that
It's about respect.
Respect
of each other, of ourselves.
Mutual
Right.
respect. Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Right. So I think there's a time for rules.
I would call them boundaries.
Boundaries. Right.
Because there are so many people, and again, because of discussions with my clients, so many people that don't want to bring up boundaries, their own boundaries. And because they're afraid of bringing their boundaries, they allow members of the family to step over them because they don't know. How would they know what grandma's boundary is, for example, if grandma
doesn't
never
know what the word boundary means?
Right.
Yeah.
And grandma gets upset. Why? Because grandma expects back to expectations. Grandma expects that the granddaughter or grandson would pick up after themselves.
Right.
But if you don't express, how would the young one know?
Right. So I guess that does come back to my house, my rules, right?
Boundaries.
At
right.
grandma's house, you pick up your toys. Period.
Yeah. But it's
not
boundaries.
a good way of phrasing it, but
No, right. But if grandma knows how to express those boundaries,
right.
because that's boundaries is a huge subject with people.
Right. Oh, absolutely.
They're upset on their kids, they're upset on their grandkids, they're upset with their co-workers. But because workplace is sort of a house, right?
Kind of, yeah.
But if you don't express your boundary,
right, you can't put that expectation on someone else.
Right.
Because
When
they have
they
a
don't
different
know.
point of view, they have a
Right.
different upbringing, they have different
right.
thought processes.
And it's a great book. Nonviolent Communication is called, where you learn how to express, because I know I've been there. I was so afraid of expressing my boundaries in the marriage with your dad that I preferred to do things myself, so I don't ask him to do things. Or I preferred to let things just be, drop it, just not to have the conversation. And that was ultimately the end of our relationship.
Yeah.
Because I was so fed up with things that he wasn't doing, but I was fed up because I was expecting him to do things.
Read your mind.
Right. Kind of. And then when I exploded,
He didn't know which way was up.
What just happened?
Yeah. That's why I think I learned from that. And I'm a very outspoken person. I'm a very expressive person. And in my relationship, I am very particular about that. Right? I understand that he's not in my brain. I understand that he does not think the same way that I do necessarily. I understand that he has a different set of rules in his head of the way that things should be. And I say, and I'm very specific about what I want, what I need, what I'd like to be done. And Right, I saw a very interesting video on Instagram about the way that you set boundaries, right? Because a lot of people say, you know, at grandma's house we pick up the toys, right? But what does that mean to a kid? That doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
At grandma's house we pick up toys, whatever. The grandma needs to say, at grandma's house we pick up the toys. If not, you will not have them for next time. There needs to be a consequence. I wouldn't say it's necessarily a consequence, but that boundary needs to not relate to the other person. It's something that I'm doing to make sure that my boundary is enforced.
Right.
Right?
Right. First of all, with men, and we had a guest a few months ago, Len, that we discussed about men's brains because they're not structured like ours. So in a relationship, we need to
Work with each other.
work exactly because clearly we're not on the same page.
Yeah, that's what.
And then with the boundaries, you have to, in the nonviolent communication, how to express your boundary is simply facts without emotions involved and without punishment.
Yeah.
Take out the trash, otherwise I'm gonna get angry. Okay.
What does that mean?
What does that mean? Take out the trash because I like the kitchen to be cleaned when I come home. It's about me,
Right.
how I like it. It's not about the other person.
All right.
So if in relationships, either spouses or roommates or parent-child or even at work, having very clear boundaries expressed and enforced keeps
By your actions.
Exactly, because if you say, and that's another thing that we had the discussion so many times, if you say something but you don't act on what you say, actions speak louder than words.
Right.
So your actions are the mirror of your boundaries.
Right.
So if you say something but you don't act on it, of course, especially between a woman and a man, the man is gonna say, okay, she didn't say anything or she didn't do anything.
She forgot it. She doesn't care anymore. She's whatever.
That's fine. It's fine.
Yeah.
But act on the words that you spoke.
Yeah. Okay. Next question. If I survived worse, you can survive this. I've heard that from you, from all of my grandparents, from dad, from everybody. I survived communism. You'll be fine.
Yeah,
That's the worst.
That's another guilt trip.
That's the worst.
Yeah.
It's specifically about communism. I survived communism. You'll be fine.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's true. People survived. Hold on. It's not about communism. It's about wars. It's about the Holocaust. It's about a lot of things serious, tough things, where you literally could have died in any second, that people survived. And it's that guilt, survivor's guilt, or what is it? How is it called?
Yeah, survivor's guilt.
It's that guilt that I suffered so much in a place or in a period or in a situation that I could have died, and you're complaining because your nail broke?
Right.
See, again, it's perspective.
It's a perspective because
And those people who are saying that, they don't understand that the other person have no idea what you've been through.
Right.
How can I expect my grandchild to know
What it was like in
what
communism.
it was in communism or in the Holocaust? How? A grandchild in the US, right, with everything, how can that child process at least that the literally could have died in any second and be separated from their parent and never see the parent again and starve to death or whatever?
Right. Nobody's pain or nobody's traumas are greater than anybody else's.
Exactly. I don't know where the book is. We have it somewhere. Viktor Frankl's. That was is a reference book for me. And I quote it in every speech I do. Viktor Frankl, A Man's Search for Meaning. Mm-hmm. Where he says, we all have and we all go through our own Auschwitz.
Yeah.
Don't compare one with the other.
Right.
Because at the level that I am right now, I have my own suffering.
Absolutely.
That nobody compares to no one's.
And nobody understands. And they shouldn't.
Right.
Because it's yours.
Right. And the same as the grandparents that suffered, how can the grandparents that suffer such a great suffering that's recognized internationally can understand the suffering of a teenager in this day and age?
Right.
They can't. They can't understand each other.
Yeah.
Unless they are at the level of awareness where they understand they cannot understand. You know what I say, that there are no bad people. There are only unconscious people that are stuck in their own preconditions and patterns.
Right.
Somebody like that would say that.
Right.
All right, so that's all for today. We hope that you enjoyed it as much as we did. And we're waiting to see you next week in a new episode. And in the meantime, please subscribe and follow and share. And if you want more information about me, you can find at andreaparc.com about my books and about my programs. And if you want to know more about Alexa,
AlexaDumitru.com is my website.
Thank you.
Thank
We'll
you.
see you soon. Bye.